Can you keep a secret? No. Public confession time. Raise your hand if you have been at some point in your life in a situation where someone confided in you confidential information, a secret, and asked you not to tell anyone, but it either slipped unintentionally in a conversation with someone else, or you couldn't help it, and you had to tell someone. Who's done it? I know I'm not the only one. Keeping secrets. You know, it can be so difficult for us sometimes to keep a secret. And we find out how difficult it is from a very early age. As our kids go back to school, finally, many of them in person, many of them will be in situations where a good friend of them says, "Hey, I need to tell you something, but I need you to keep it a secret." They themselves will have many secrets to tell their close friends. And the temptation they will experience right away is, "Oh, this is some interesting information. I want to tell someone." The temptation will be there to tell someone. But keeping a secret isn't child play. Whether you are a kid in school or an adult at work or in family, secrets are sacred. They are pieces of information that belongs to someone else. They hold importance. And when they ask you to keep a secret, and when we break that seal, that promise, then oftentimes what happens is the relationships are strained, sometimes broken. Granted, of course, that the information or that secret, that it has no moral implications. Now, that's one of the many themes that's offered to us in the gospel. We'll focus on that. It's so difficult to contain myself in a gospel like this. There's so much we can say, but I'm constraining myself to just this theme. Jesus orders people to keep a secret, but they are unable to do so. So what does this say about us? What does this say about our relationships with one another? And what does this say about our relationship with God? We'll focus on that today. So we have here Jesus who is traveling in his ministry. And he is visiting a place that he has visited before. We don't know how many times, maybe it was once, twice, thrice. And he's there to perform more miracles. So people already knew him. They either heard about him from the past times he was there, they either heard rumors or gossip, or they must have seen him when he was there the last time and saw him perform some incredible things. Now he's also in an area, a part of the area that is inhabited by many Gentiles. A Gentile just means someone who is non-Jewish, someone who shares a different faith, someone who has different religious beliefs. Now, one of the things that in this area was popular was a strong obsession with magicians. So, it would have been very easy for people, Gentiles, to see Jesus and only see another magician and not understand the depth of what he was saying and the depth of what he was doing. Now, Jesus, he does his mission in stages. In every different place, he does something, he focuses on something different. There are times where all he does is teaches, the Sermon on the Mount. There are times where all he does is confront bad leadership, especially when he's outside the temple in Jerusalem. And there are instances like this one where Jesus' primary focus isn't teaching, it isn't reprimanding, it is simply showing miracles, performing miracles. What are miracles? Miracles are the manifestation of God's power working through him for them. Now, Jesus is doing this because he's very good at adapting to his audience. He's very good at giving them what they need so that they can have an experience of what he's trying to offer. Speaks their language, so to speak. So, as I mentioned, common in this region were magicians. And magicians would come, they would perform miracles, and they would do so to grow in popularity. The way they grew in popularity was through word of mouth. So they wanted people to spread rumors about them. They wanted people to be able to gossip about them. They would want people to talk about them. So Jesus here is performing signs similar to that of a magician, using very familiar gestures, very familiar language. And he's doing so, first of all, to earn their trust. so that they don't see him as a complete stranger. But at the same time, Jesus is trying to differentiate himself from the magicians, from them. Because he eventually wants them to get to know who he really is. Not a magician, but a Messiah. And not just the Messiah of the Jews, but a Messiah of the world, including them. And that was a very risky move. Jesus was very daring here. Because any Jewish person who was present there during this miracle, they would have seen him cure the deaf man and would have immediately associated Jesus with the promise of Isaiah. We heard that in the first reading. But Gentiles, they didn't have this foreknowledge. They didn't have this background. So for them, the action looked simply like magic. And really good magic too. At the end, what do they say? He does all things well. They're not talking about God does all things well. No, they're thinking, this is a very good magician. He will make, who is it, Penn and Keller, look like amateurs. This is a very good magician. So that is why Jesus is telling them, don't say anything. Don't tell anyone what you are witnessing. Don't spread things about me because you are not sure. You don't know yet what I'm doing. You don't know what I'm saying. Don't spread misinformation. Don't spread gossip without knowing the full facts first. You know, we often like information more than we like people. And we like to share this information immediately, especially when this information triggers something in us, when our emotions are involved. And as it so often happens, not everything that we experience initially, not everything that we hear is always true. And all of us have experienced our good share of misinformation these days, from politics to science to even our faith. We might hear something, we get triggered either in anger or in excitement, and before we know it, we're out there sharing that information. And it spreads faster than wildfires these days. So by Jesus telling them not to say anything, Jesus is inviting them to, first of all, take a step back, inviting them to forego this inclination to share what they're witnessing out of the emotion, to stop the gossip, to stop saying things without knowing the full facts, and first, to allow themselves to have a personal encounter of God's power through Him. Because only in that experience would they come to realize and know who He really is. And only then would they be ready to proclaim the truth of Christ. That's the end of Mark's gospel. It's a beautiful contrast. Here Jesus is saying, shh, don't say anything. The end of Mark's gospel ends with a commission. Go out and proclaim. Go and say the experience you have had. But it begins first with that experience. Now, unfortunately, the more he told them not to do it, the more they did. You know, he spends so much time in his ministry trying to clear those rumors, trying to fight against this, which we as humans tend to do. Even the disciples were very affected by it. Remember, later on, the next chapter, he will say to them, "Who do people say that I am?" He's already hearing about the rumors that spread because of that action. Who do people say that I am? People were more fascinated by the information that they heard than by the person. Meaning they did not know him enough to love him. At the end, isn't that what all gossip is? The problem with failing to keep a secret is that we are more fascinated by the information being given to us than by the person who is confining in us. So the problem isn't a matter of self-discipline, it's a matter of love, of not loving someone enough to honor their privacy. And if we don't love someone enough, then we will be careless about spreading misinformation about them. Now, Jesus offers us a solution to this. And the way he does this is through the action of healing this man who is deaf and mute. Notice, being deaf, he could not hear others. Being mute, others could not hear him. Meaning, there was an impediment of knowing and being known. of loving and being loved. So what we're dealing with here, yes, it is a physical impediment in healing at one level, but it's also an impediment of the heart at another level. When our very first inclination is to be reactionary and spread gossip, then we're not being fully open to know and be known, to love and be loved. And this only creates fear. It only creates rumors, indifference, racism, partiality, everything that is completely opposed to the gospel. The community of James in that second reading, they were falling back to this mentality, which is why James has to be so strong and upfront about it. God is not partial. God shows no partiality like you do. So stop it. What do you need in order to stop it? Well, you need faith. The only way that you can overcome this is by faith, meaning allowing Jesus to encounter us, to jab his finger into our ears, into our mouths, and in doing so says Ephphatha, be opened. And out of us then will come not rumors, not gossip, not what we think, but orthodoxy. This man, when his mouth is open, it says he spoke plainly. The word written in Greek is ortho. He spoke ortho. He spoke truth. He spoke truth. In faith, we will always be moved towards speaking truth. Truth about us, truth about others, truth about God. So bringing it home, what does that mean for us in our own community, in our own reality? At a personal level, we're all encouraged to love one another, even those who might be a bit more difficult to love, and there are people who are a little more difficult to love. But only in faith can we acquire that love that breaks down the barriers in our families, in our friends circles, in our society, in our politics, in our immigrant communities, in our thoughts about refugees, regardless of who they are, regardless of what faith people proclaim. It is faith in Jesus that allows us to see each other as we truly are and nothing else. We say it time and time again, children of God, children of God. It's so easy to forget that. At a communal level, we are encouraged by Jesus to go out and proclaim the gospel, to no longer keep it secret. However, we live in an environment today, especially in the Archdiocese of Seattle, in Western Washington, that's very secular. We live in a society that tells us the opposite. No, keep it secret. Stay quiet. We don't want to hear about your faith. That's personal. Keep it to yourself. Only in faith can we acquire the love that we need to be able to share our faith courageously. And not in a pharisaical way where we're beating people over the head with our doctrine and our dogmas, but with love, with our actions, with the way that we speak about each other, ourselves, our faith. This faith will always require first a closeness with Jesus. Curious little side note. You know what the next chapter of Mark's gospel is? We're in chapter 7. The beginning of chapter 8 begins with the multiplication of the loaves and fish. We're going to skip it because we spent a whole month with John's version of this miracle. But it's curious to see how Mark associates closeness with God with being fed. As Catholics, we take this and translate it as the Eucharist, of course. The Eucharist continues to be for us that continual encounter with Christ after baptism, that one-on-one time, that moment where Jesus takes us aside and gives us the power to open our lives to ortho, to be known and to know, to love and to be loved. So may that be the encounter that breaks down any impediments in our lives. May that be the encounter that strengthens us to be the kind of friend the world needs us to be, our family needs us to be, our circles needs us to be. The kind that loves others enough to honor them, the kind that honors them enough to keep secrets when they need to be kept, and enough to let them into our own secrets when they need to be let in. Especially the secret about Jesus, which shouldn't be. It is an encounter. That's where it begins. And when we begin with that encounter, with that experience of Christ, it's impossible to keep it a secret.